Hello, I'm Dave and this is Fiver, out once again for a walk in the countryside. Thanks for joining us. Now today I'm at the town of Weymouth in Dorset, and it's situated at the mouth of the River Wey, about 7 miles south of Dorchester. And we're going to be walking a roughly 5.5 mile circular route, starting at Radipole Lake and initially following the route of a disused railway line, now called the Rodwell Trail. And we'll head south to Sandsfoot Gardens and Castle, and then head northeast to Nothe Gardens to check out another fort before walking along the southern side of Weymouth Harbour to Hope Square, then over the Weymouth Town Bridge, and then maybe a detour around the northern side of the harbour and eventually back to our starting point. Now, I mentioned at the beginning it was a walk in the countryside. To be fair, it's going to be more of an urban walk, although we will see a fair bit of the sea towards the second half of our route. But it's a place I've always wanted to come and see, so hopefully you'll find it an enjoyable journey to come along with us. Now, I'm filming at the end of June. It's actually quite a nice temperature today. Last week, it's brutal weather. One of the it was the hottest day in June in the UK. But I say there's a fair bit of cloud about, so it's going to be nice and cool. Hopefully it'll be light enough for the walk. Perfect conditions for walking. Do come along with us. Well, I've parked my car at the Swannery Car Park, which is just by Radipole Lake, which you can probably just see behind me here. And what a beautiful lake it is too. Now, there was a Roman port here in days gone by, serving Dorchester to the north. Indeed, there's a Roman road from Weymouth to Dorchester. And Radipole Lake is fed by the River Wey, and the source of that is at Upwey Wishing Well. And of course, Logan and I have done a walk there in the past. If you haven't seen that, do check it out. Okay, well, I've left the Swannery Car Park, just passed underneath, I think it's called Swannery Bridge. I'm now going to head southwards towards Westham Bridge. We're just looking over to the Swannery Bridge there. There used to be a viaduct carrying the old railway line that we're going to be joining shortly, and that branched away from the main station and went all the way to the Isle of Portland. I don't think Fiver's ever seen a gull or a seagull before. He said, "That's a big one, Dad." You've seen plenty of swans before. So I think we'll leave that one alone. So there's Westham Bridge over there. So we're going to cross over that and then we need to look out for an underpass and then head underneath that. Well, this splendid church is St Joseph's Church. It's Catholic and very much Romanesque in style, built between 1933 and 1935. Also known as Our Lady Star of the Sea, I believe. Now, this is what I was looking for, the start of the Rodwell Trail. Now, it was opened in the year 2000 and it basically follows the route of the Weymouth and Portland Railway line. Opened in 1865 and closed in 1965. And there are a couple of magnificent columns there, or pillars. Guess that must be for the level crossing for Abbotsbury Road, not sure. Well, we haven't come too far down the Rodwell Trail and we've come across the site of what was Westham Holt, built in 1909, and it was a single timber facing platform on the upside, extended in 1913 and rebuilt with stone facing in 1946, but it closed in 1952. I see there's an iron post over there. I wonder if that was a gate for the path onto the station. I'm not sure. Well, Weymouth has got a fascinating history. I mean, these days it's a seaside town situated on a sheltered bay at the mouth of the River Wey, but it's the third largest settlement in Dorset after Bournemouth and Poole. And originally there were two settlements, both of which were ports. You had Melcombe Regis and Weymouth, basically on opposite sides of Weymouth Harbour. And Melcombe Regis is thought to have been the first port at which the Black Death came to England in 1348. But the two towns often were rivals for trade, and they were brought together, united by an Act of Parliament in 1571 to form a double borough. But it's certainly built up over the years, especially to the north. Well, this part of the route is fairly straightforward to follow. So heading directly sort of south, and it's on a tarmac track. It's also a cycle route, and as Fiver has a habit of chasing anything that moves, he'll be on a short lead for a little bit as a cyclist just shoots by. We ignored that one. Well, I'll continue to make my way along the trail, and looks like a remnant from the Second World War. I think this was a gun emplacement right by the track, and of course it was a good position on quite high ground. Well, a little pit stop to take in an urban view. Seeing the car park there. You can just about see some yachts in the harbour, and then further in the distance the Jurassic coast, and of course we'll see the sea a little bit later on in the walk. Well, this is the site of what was Rodwell Station. Opened in 1870 with just one platform that was 100 feet long on the downside, and that was extended in 1894. And then it all developed when a second platform and passing loop and signal box were added in 1908. The main station building was actually destroyed in an air raid in 1941, and I don't think it was ever replaced, but it all closed in 1952. And I was reading that it was always considered very attractive, set in a deep tree-lined cutting and always kept very well. And it regularly was the winner of the best kept station in the Great Western Region area competitions. Just leaving Rodwell Station, and it certainly is a deep cutting here. I wonder if it's man-made, I'm not sure, but it's certainly got an amazing atmosphere to it. Oh, I think a squirrel may have been spotted. He says it's up there, Dad. Can I go and say hello to it? Oh, goodness me, look at this. Now, I've just passed a sign that says this is Weymouth's famous dripping well. And you can see water that's literally just dripping out of the side there, covering this sort of moss bank. It really is quite enchanting. Now, our friend Sir Frederick Treves, in his Highways and Byways in Dorset book that he published in 1906, had a few things to say about Weymouth. The joint town of Weymouth and Melcombe Regis is incommoded by its exceptional popularity, which is well deserved and is vouched for by a crowd of many thousands of visitors every summer. The town lies upon a flat at the end of a glorious bay, which has been compared with the Bay of Naples, but which resembles that bight in the Italian coast no essential. The charm of Weymouth Bay is due to its great size, to its symmetry, to the majestic sweep of its shore, to the variations of colour in its sea walls, as well as to the deep blue of its waters. Another remnant of the railway line, and this is all that remains of Sandsfoot Castle, Holt, opened in 1932 and closed in 1952. And it's quite sad that all that's left is the single wooden platform. Well, I made my way to Sandsfoot Gardens, and isn't this quite exquisite? So pretty. And it was created in 1931. Let's go and have a little wander. Well, just by Sandsfoot Gardens is Sandsfoot Castle, also known as Weymouth Castle, constructed by Henry VIII in 1542, and it was part of the defences against possible invasion by France and the Holy Roman Empire, and it defended Weymouth Bay. And the earthworks were added to defences in 1623. But it was actually withdrawn from military use in 1665 and used as a storehouse until 1696. But by 1725 it was a ruin, and in 1902 Weymouth Corporation bought it for the town, and it's currently owned by Dorset Council. But the castle building itself is actually now closed to the public due to the fact that it's unstable. We're certainly up here by Sandsfoot Castle, looking over to the west. You get some terrific views of, well, there's Chesil Beach, that sort of, or Chesil Bank, that links Weymouth and Portland, and then of course you've got the Isle of Portland itself, and then of course looking over to the east, the Jurassic coast that I know so well. Well, I'm pleased to say at Sandsfoot Gardens there's a lovely cafe that does obviously teas, coffees, cakes and ice cream. So, clotted cream for me, and it definitely is for humans, and dog ice cream for his lordship. And yeah, it's definitely dog ice cream, so that should keep you happy. And yes, it's got a spoon. Well, I've left Sandsfoot Castle and still heading eastwards, and a terrific view over to the sea there. It's looking quite calm today, especially on this side of the sea wall. Well, a little update on the route. We've come down Old Castle Road, and I'm just going to take a turning up Bellevue Road, and that's going to take me to a lovely green. Well, this terrific open area here is Bincleaves Green, and the magnificent monument in front of me to a chap called Sir Thomas Buxton, who lived between 1786 and 1845, and he lived around these parts. He was MP for Weymouth for 19 years, and he played a very significant role on the abolishment of slavery, the Slavery Abolishment Act 1833. And He was also the first chairman of the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals in 1824. That later became the RSPCA in 1840. Well, you certainly get a good view of the Isle of Portland up here on Bencleys Green. I say it's a great place to explore. I say Logan and I have been there a couple of times. So we did a walk in the north and a walk in the south. Wow, how about this for a view? As I say, this is looking over to the east, and there's Nothe Fort in the distance. That's where we're going to be heading next. And we've got a choice. We can either go along the bottom by the water's edge or through woodland on slightly higher ground, and I think that's where we're going to go. Well, it looks like they're doing a fairly major bit of work on the sea defences down there. There's certainly a very big digger or two and some very large boulders. All right, we're just about to come into Nothe Gardens, coming in from the side there. So we're going to follow a path that takes us through a bit of woodland and eventually going to make our way to Nothe Fort. Oh, I tell you, it's so pretty coming through these Nothe Gardens. Quite exquisite. And just past a sign that asks us to keep dogs on lead, so Fiver will be on a lead for the rest of the walk now. Oh, goodness me. What's this, Fiver? We've seen plenty of squirrels, but he says, I've no idea what this is, Dad, but I'll smell it anyway. Some sort of spider, isn't it? Well, just before we get to Nothe Fort, come across this splendid sculpture, and it basically commemorates the fact that the sailing events for the 2012 Olympics were held here at Weymouth. Well, in front of me here is Nothe Fort, built between 1860 and 1872 to protect Portland and Weymouth Harbour. Portland Harbour started to be built in 1849. It was built by the Admiralty as a facility for the Royal Navy. And when it was completed in 1872, it was the largest man-made harbour in the world, and it's still one of the biggest today. But the fort was abandoned in 1956 and bought by the council in 1961, and it's now a museum and tourist attraction. I think dogs are allowed inside. Well, another little pit stop. We've left Nothe Fort and I'm now looking down into the sort of southern side of the harbour, and I can see the beach in the far distance. That's where we will eventually be heading, but we've got quite a few things to look at before we get there. Well, there's the Weymouth lifeboat. I believe there's been a lifeboat station in Weymouth since the 1860s. Well, we've been walking along the side of the harbour, enjoying looking around. It seems so fresh and well presented everywhere. And we're eventually going to be making our way onto the other side, but we've got a few things to look on this side first. Well, just coming into a place called Hope Square, and the Hope Brewery was here, built in 1903, 1904. Hope Square was actually used for brewing, well, way back since 1252, and barley was grown locally at Radipole, and of course you had spring water nearby. But it all became a shopping complex in 1990. Well, there's a terrific pub here. It's the Red Lion pub, built in 1851, although possibly there was a pub here in 1823. And originally it was a tap house for the Devonish brewery here, and it's been known as the Dorset Brewers Ale House in the past. Interesting, if you look at an alleyway just on the side of the pub that goes to the harbour, well, that alleyway was used by troops waiting to board ships for the D-Day landings in the Second World War, and you can see where they've scratched some of their initials and dates into the bricks on the side of the wall while they were waiting. And this is the Old Rooms Inn. Originally there was an 18th century private house here that became the assembly rooms in the 1770s, and then in 1990 an old pump that was originally on the North Quay, built in 1775, was moved to the front of the pub. Well, this splendid church here close to the bridge is the Holy Trinity Church, built of Portland stone between 1834 and 1836, and it was extended in 1887. We're just crossing over Weymouth Town Bridge, looking to the south there, and the bridge is raised every 2 hours between 8 AM and 6 PM. It's a Bascule Bridge, I think that's how you pronounce it. Basically it's a lifting bridge, and it was opened in 1930, and there'd been 5 previous bridges across the harbour here since 1597. Well, I've just come down St Mary Street, and this is St Mary's Church, built in between 1815 and 1817 using Portland stone, and it was restored in 1922. Now, there was a chapel on the site in the 13th century, but that was replaced by a new church in 1605, and that was often used by King George III on his visits to the town. But that was considered too small, so this new one was built. Well, this is the Ship Inn. It has 17th century origins, and it's owned by Hall and Woodhouse, the brewers from Blandford Forum, and has been owned by them since 1856, I believe. Now, I've just made my way down, I think it's called Maiden Street, to check out the ladies' toilets. Now, the reason I've come here, if you look above in the wall, you'll see what looks like a cannonball lodged up there, and it's a relic of the English Civil War. The Battle of Weymouth took place in February 1645. Melcombe was a parliamentary garrison, and Portland was a royalist stronghold. But the cannonball you see today is actually a wooden replica. I think they were worried that the original might fall out and hit somebody. And this is the George Inn. Now, the current pub was built in 1885 on the site of an original 17th century pub called the George Tavern. And there's the old custom house, built around about 1800, I think. You can see the royal arms above. I'm just watching that boat come into the harbour. I wonder where that's been today. Well, we've made our way onto the beach at last. Now, this little area here is actually dog friendly, so basically dogs are allowed all year round. A little bit further on there are restrictions at different times of the year, but it's certainly a lovely sandy beach and some quite glorious views, but we need to check out the water. Well, Fiver's enjoying a little paddle in the sea just to keep his feet cool. Well, you don't want to drink that, mate. It's salt water. He says, oh, I much prefer those crystal clear chalk streams that you take me to, Dad. Now I hope you can see this because there are sort of nets covering it to protect it, but it's actually a sculpture made completely out of sand. Isn't that amazing? Well, if you think that I'm going to climb up there and film, you're very much mistaken. Not my cup of tea, that's for sure. Well, maybe if I was 30 years younger, I might be tempted to have a go on this one. Quite awesome statue of King George III, erected in 1810. As I said, he was a regular visitor to the town between 1789 and 1805. Indeed, if you look over to the east, up on a ridge on one of the hills, you can make out a chalk cutting of King George riding his horse. Or one final look at the beach. As beaches go, I think this is one of the best I've come across. But before we head back to the car park, there's one more place we need to visit. Well, folks, we've come to the end of our walk. We thought we'd do the end scene here at Weymouth Beach with some fish and chips. We hope you enjoyed the walk today. Slightly different to normal, I know that. If you did, please do give us a thumbs up and a like, and do leave a comment, and do check out our Facebook page, Dave's Countryside Walks. So until we meet again, thanks for watching and cheerio. Right, it must be sausage time for you. And a pint of Thirsty Ferret for Daddy. And of course, fish and chips by the sea.